This video is for all my fellow ambitious women who tend to lose focus on their goals when life gets busy. There tends to be a lot going on the last 3 months of the year, and I know I have specific goals and things I want to stay focused on. I have a specific direction I want to stay in alignment with. So today I want to share what I'm doing to stay focused and to bridge that gap between knowing what I want and actually doing the things that are going to get me there. And hopefully you can use this process or parts of it to help you in your own life. So when I say I'm locking in specifically for the next 3 months, for me, it's really not about being as productive as possible or dialing into the max. For me, it's so much more about creating structures and routines that are going to help me stay focused, both on the goals I have as well as the version of myself I want to be. And with that, meaning both the things that I do, as well as more of my inner world, the way I show up in the world, how I carry myself, my energy. I know for me, if I don't have structures or practices to help me stay focused in a certain direction, there's a really high chance of them just falling to the wayside, especially when life gets really busy. And the next 3 months tend to be such a busy time of year. I feel like there are far more social gatherings than normal. We have all the holidays. The sun sets earlier, it's starting to get colder. So not only are there more distractions, but I also tend to feel less inclined to be productive when the sun is setting earlier and when it's colder outside. So, there's a lot going on. So here's what I'm doing to stay focused on the things that I know are really important to me and to stay moving in the direction that I know I want to go. The first thing I am doing is getting clear on and specific about what I am prioritizing and focusing on over the next 3 months. I feel like it can be so easy to dream or feel inspired by the idea of leveling up in some area of our lives, but without getting really specific about or so clear in our minds about what we're choosing to prioritize or what we're going to do differently or what we're aiming for, then odds are we're not going to show up in the ways that are going to create that type of change that we're looking for. So I found getting really specific on those things really makes such a difference. So that's the first thing I am doing. And I actually recently just did this. I just went through this process a few weeks ago. I hit this point where I really wanted to get back into some really helpful routines that I tend to have that I had actually fallen out of for a month or so. And I made a whole video about how I was getting back into those routines. And within that, I got really specific on what I'm choosing to focus on and prioritize right now. So I've already done this step, and if you have any interest in that video, I'll link it right here. And personally, I do so much better with having some kind of a visual to take the jumbled information in my brain and pull it out and actually put it in front of me where it's organized. I feel like I can process it better. So I wrote out these for myself just in a Notion template that not only I use as a way to organize this information and get even clearer on it, but it's also so easy to go back and reference it. It's something I can go back and look at on a daily or weekly basis and just remind myself like, hey, these are the things that I want to be focusing on and prioritizing right now. And then along with that, I also personally set some goals for the last 3 months of the year or, some Q4 goals. And I'm really not that much of a goal-oriented person, but through time and experience, I have found that setting specific goals does help me show up to those things. It helps me actually do certain things that help move me in the direction I want to go, as well as help me just get out of my comfort zone. I really think goals can be a really good way to help stretch ourselves, help pull ourselves out of our comfort zone. So for example, for these last 3 months, I have a saving/investing goal for every single month that is bigger, way bigger than what I normally do. And that just gets me to push myself a little bit more in that area. I also set a goal to host an in-person workshop, which definitely gets me out of my comfort zone. I've done presentations before, but I've never done a in-person workshop where I am the one fully organizing and leading it. And I love that idea, but without making it a specific goal, it probably would have been something that just kind of stayed in the back of my mind instead of actually taking actions toward making it happen. So for me, this is step one. What do I want to prioritize? What do I want to aim for? And then setting specific goals. So then the next step is, well, what does this actually tangibly look like in my day-to-day? What specific actions or things do I need to be doing to move me in that direction, right? Even just what does prioritizing whatever I've listed as my top priorities, what does that actually look like within my day? And with any kind of goal or change that you want to make in your life, even just leveling up our lives in some kind of way, it is so important to get so specific about the actions we're going to take, right? Like I can say, oh, I'm going to start eating healthier, but that's so vague. It's unclear to the brain exactly what we're asking ourselves to do versus if instead I said something like, okay, I'm going to aim for starting a routine and keeping up with a routine where on every Sunday, I'm going to go to the grocery store and prep some staples. Or I'm going to aim to have a vegetable with every meal. That's so much more specific and so much more clear on what we're actually aiming to get ourselves to do. And then it makes it so much easier to actually follow through and do that thing. So I listed out the exact actions that I am looking to do and be consistent with, and again, written all out in Notion to help organize it in my brain as well as easily come back to and reference. And right now, the main focus for me really is routines that will help me stay focused on the things that I want to get myself to consistently do and finding routines that are going to help me show up to those things. So for example, I'm getting back into a routine on Sundays where I take a little bit of time to look at my goals, kind of center some of my focus around that for a moment, and then plan out my week, plan out when I'm going to do specific actions or time block certain things. I also have a little morning routine that involves me reminding myself how I want to show up that day. I also have a little habit tracker, again on Notion, where I can go and look at that every single day to help just hold myself accountable to doing these things, or even look back at, okay, I know there are specific things I want to get myself to do more often than I am right now. And I can just open that page and boom, there it is. There's the list. So then the next thing for me is, well, what's going to help me be this version of me? What is going to help me show up in these ways? And if we're looking at sticking with something, then consistency is just part of the equation. It's got to be part of the conversation. And I could easily sit here and talk about specific tips and tricks that can help both of us be more consistent. But through my own experience with myself, as well as years of working with other people, I have really found that the key to being more consistent with something is knowing yourself, is noticing and learning what helps you take action, what helps you show up, what helps you continue to do the thing or get back to it if you do fall off a little bit. Learning these things about yourself and then using those things as tools in your toolbox. And it's not that when you know these things, you are going to stick with things 100% all the time. That's just not how we operate. It's not how life goes. But it can help us show up so much more frequently. And that's really the key. So I really think improving our consistency or improving the frequency in which we do something really comes down to experimenting, trying different things, and just noticing what actually helps us, what actually works for us. So for example, I've really learned for me, something that really helps me stay more consistent is keeping my focus in the direction that of the things I want to be prioritizing, because I can so easily get distracted with all the other things going on in life. And next thing I know, my time and energy and attention are going all sorts of places, and it's pulling away from the things I actually want to be prioritizing or whatever my goals are. So for me, having routines that help pull me back to my priorities makes such a difference. That's something I've learned I just have to have in my life, which is why I put such an emphasis on my Sunday planning and refocusing routine as well as my little morning routine. I've also learned a really big thing for me is actually scheduling. So that might look like putting something just actually in my calendar, Or that can look like giving certain actions a specific place in my day. So, for example, if I just said, okay, I want to be reading more, odds are I might start reading a little bit more. But I have found if I say, okay, I'm going to start reading at least a couple pages every single weeknight before I go to bed, now that has a specific place within my day. And I've just learned that that helps me do it way more. And along the way, I've also just learned a bunch of little quirks. So, for example, if I sit down to do some computer work, I may sit there and get distracted or procrastinate a little bit. But I found if I put in headphones and press play on a playlist, it is so much easier for me to go into work mode and just focus and start doing work. I can't tell you why that is, but it's something I've learned works for me, right? And that's my whole point of all of this is learning what it is that actually helps you. Because at the end of the day, we may have specific patterns that are pretty similar for all of us just because we all have a human brain, but we are also so different in so many ways. Another thing I'm focusing on doing is intentionally elevating my vibe. Something I have definitely noticed in my own life is when I'm intentional about doing things that, make me feel more high vibe, make me feel really good, make me feel excited or inspired. It creates this really beautiful domino effect, and it absolutely changes how I show up and the types of decisions I make and what I do. So for example, let's say I start the day either dancing around to music I really love or out on a coffee walk with a friend. Those two things I've noticed make me feel really elevated in the morning, feel really good. So then I already feel really good, and that translates into my drive on the way to work. Maybe as I'm feeling really good, I continue listening to music that I really enjoy, and I'm just sitting there doing gratitude for my life, which keeps the vibes high. And then when I'm interacting with clients at work, we're having great interactions, we're in a great mood, we're having great conversation, which makes me feel that much more fulfilled, makes me feel that much better. And then after work, maybe I feel super inspired to go do something like work out or go feel inspired to work on a creative project, right? Doing things that make me feel really good, I can tell bleeds into everything else. And I'm so much more likely to show up in the ways I want to and to do things that are actually aligned with my goals. So I would say notice what makes you feel inspired. What energizes you? What makes you feel really good? What helps fulfill you? Even just what makes you feel more calm or at peace. And then do what you can to integrate that type of stuff into your life as much as possible, right? And that also includes content that you consume or people that you talk to. What types of content leaves you feeling just kind of versus what types of content leaves you feeling really inspired, makes you want to go and do something really good for yourself. And just noticing that and kind of just clocking it in your brain. And now that's something that you can pull into your life even more or turn to whenever you want to feel those types of feelings. And I'm also making sure to take time out of my day every day to focus on all the good in my life because I have definitely noticed how much of a difference that makes for me. Another thing I'm focusing on is letting go of distractions. In this particular season of locking in for me, I know I want to delete some of the distractions in my life because they can be such a time suck. So I just want to notice what really pulls me out of focus and do what I can to minimize the distractions. I just want to be way more intentional with my time. And I know one of the big things, as it is for probably most of us, is my phone. So I want to be so much more intentional about when I'm actually getting on my phone. So keeping my phone honestly just away from me for a majority of the day, aiming to only get on social media once a day, maybe when tasks are done for the day, and even just being more particular about or pickier with what social engagements I actually say yes to. I do think a lot of us do have a lot on our plate and do live pretty busy lives, but I also think a lot of it does come down to time management in a way, and we might be surprised just how much when we remove certain things from our lives, how much time we actually have. And maybe not even just time, but also energy to do the things that are more important to us. I'm also being intentional about paying more attention to my thoughts and specifically trying to think more like the higher version of myself, the version of myself who is getting or has the types of things that I want, the type of ways I want to show up. How would she be thinking? What would her mindset be around these things? And then just trying to show up more like that, right? Even asking myself the question, does this thought align with the version of myself I want to be? This isn't something I plan on doing all day, every day. I think that would require a lot of cognitive resources and would just be a lot. But I do want to check in with myself and ask myself that question here and there throughout the day, right? Especially more related to around the things I have goals around. Just checking in and playing around with, okay, the thoughts that I have right now, does that align with her? As well as how might she be thinking about this? And lastly, I'm creating a becoming board. This is just kind of a mood board I have on Pinterest that has a bunch of random pictures that feel like the version of myself I want to be, the type of vibe I'm going for, or, around the goals that I have. It represents what I'm wanting to step into and how I want to feel and what I'm focusing on. And I just really like this because I am such a visual person. Visuals help me a whole lot. And so I think this is just a fun way to kind of feel into that a little bit and to just have that as like a representation of what I want. So this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm staying focused, and I'm excited to see where the next 3 months takes me. And hopefully you got some value out of this. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know and leave a comment and what you want to see more of from this channel. But thanks so much for hanging out and sticking around, especially with my very congested voice as I share what's helping me right now. Again, thanks for being here, and I hope to see you in another one. Bye.